So I gotta think that I'm kind of a masochist when it comes to gaming because if somebody ever tells me that a game is bad, I immediately want to try it just to see if it is bad. And that is what brought me to play South Park Snow Day. Now, that isn't the only thing that made me want to play this game. Another reason I wanted to play this game is I absolutely enjoyed the Stick of Truth and the Fractured Butthole. The Stick of Truth is probably one of my favorite RPGs that isn't a JRPG in like the scheme of things. Just super hilarious, super fun combat, and just a great world to explore with a lot of great like hidden secrets and details. The Fractured Butthole was also hilarious and was also very fun to play. So this continuing the story seemed very intriguing in a lot of ways, but this was a game I didn't buy right away because I could tell that it was basically like your cheesy co-op, top-down view, like experience that you can get with almost any other indie game that's co-op these days, right? There was nothing in there that screamed, "Hey, I need to buy this day one." So, unlike the Fractured Butthole and the Stick of Truth, I waited. And that's when you started seeing all the reviews and a lot of people talking about it, how this game was empty, how this game was bland, and how this game didn't really have the humor of the previous games. So once I finally got a chance to get this as like a rental, I ended up renting it and just wanted to give it a try. Now I just played this game in full. I got the full 1000 gamer score. I completed it multiple times just to give my honest take of this game. So with that being said, here is my review for the South Park Snow Day video game. Now, South Park Snow Day does continue the stories of the two previous games. Essentially, you're playing as the new kid that was in the previous two games, and it starts off basically a snow day has happened, the kids are going to play, but they're having a dispute about the rules of the game because the previous two games, the rules were kind of broken and the new kids kind of blamed for a lot of it. But you end up in this idea, like in this world where all three of your like main South Park characters, Kyle, Stan, and Cartman, all have different ways they want the rules to their games to work. So that is basically the storyline you're following along. If you guys can obviously tell, you start off allied with Cartman, and then you take on Kyle and then Stan, and then you end up taking on Cartman, and you take on another character I'm not going to reveal. That's kind of a interesting little twist from the show. So you end up continuing that story, but they end up using information from the show as well to hint at some beats in the story, which makes me think that the previous games were canon to the show. I wasn't entirely sure if they ever were or not, never really looked into it. But this game pretty much tells you that the three video games are all canon with the show as well. So I like that idea. I like that idea that you're incorporating not only events from the two previous games, but events in the show as well that kind of help continue on the story. But when it comes to positives in the game, I'm going to be honest, guys, there's not much to them. Outside of the connection to both the show and the previous games, I didn't really like much about this game in terms of like stuff that was absolutely perfect in my mind. There were a few moments where I laughed. There were a few moments where I chuckled, but those were few and far between. The story in this game felt a little bit more serious in nature than the two previous games. There was less jokes to be around. A lot of the moments I laughed came from Randy Marsh. Like the moments where he's in the game, I actually found myself laughing at a bit. But outside of that, there wasn't too much to it. So I think the only real positive I had in the game was the boss fights, because each boss fight had its own unique mechanics and they were enjoyable. The boss fight with Cartman, the boss fight with, I guess you could say a minor boss before Cartman and his level, a boss fight with Kyle, a boss fight with Stan, and then two other boss fights with other characters that I'm not going to name. I want to leave those surprises for anybody who hasn't played it. Those were all fun. You had to use different mechanics and you had to do different things, and you might have needed to take in different abilities to do those boss fights on harder difficulties. So that was one of the things I enjoyed, truly enjoyed, was the 5 or 6 boss fights you encounter in the game. But then that brings me to my mixed, and this is one of the things, right? I said 5 or 6 boss fights. So that might indicate to you that this game is short. And this game is very short. I beat the main campaign in about 4 hours. And there's 5 missions to the main campaign. Each one of them took me about the entire campaign took me about 4 hours to complete. Each mission took me probably approximately 45 minutes. And the reason those missions took me as long as they did is because I have the habit of searching every nook and cranny in any game I play. I will search every corner looking for anything I can find in any game. And I did it with this game. But there wasn't much to find in these games. So if I didn't waste my time trying to look for hidden secrets and hidden collectibles and hidden items that didn't exist, I probably would have beaten this game in 3 hours or less. That's how fast this game is to complete. That is really terrible for any game that releases to be that short that isn't like a $10 game. And this game, I believe, retails for $29.99, I want to say. That is bad. But at the same time, if you're trying to build off this idea of a roguelike experience, which is what they're doing with this game, it's supposed to be a gauntlet-like, a roguelike experience. I can understand having a shorter campaign and trying to delve off of this idea of having people replay it. And I can understand that, right? I can understand you wanting to do that. But that's going to bring me to all my negatives. First and foremost, the replayability desire is not there. Once I beat this campaign the first time, the only reason I replayed anything else was to get the achievements. If I didn't want to get the achievements in this game, I would have never touched this game again. The story was not fun or that interesting. The combat sucks, and I'll get to the combat in a second on why it's so terrible. The roguelike experience sucks, and I'll get to that when I talk about the combat. The enemy variety is lacking. The experience with friends, you don't even need that because there's not much you can do really in a co-op experience besides just run through the levels that are boring to play anyways. The world itself is very empty, unlike both previous games where you get to explore all of South Park. You're literally relegated to linear corridors of parts of the world, and half of it's covered in snow, so you can't really interact with anything. So the game is empty, the game is boring. And that brings me to the combat, because if there's no desire of replayability, the biggest reason for that would have to be the combat, right? And if you're thinking that, that is true. The combat sucks in this game. The combat is simplistic. There is not much in terms of variety. You get, I believe, 8 skills you can unlock. You get 3 melee weapons and 3 ranged weapons you can use. Then you get power-up cards and what they call bullshit cards or BS cards that allow you to kind of have a little bit of variety. But each weapon only has like 4 cards that upgrade that weapon. Each ability only has about 4 cards that upgrade that ability. So even though you have 4 cards or so per thing, and even though you have some other cards that kind of just affect your character as a whole, once you play through the missions 7 or 8 times, you've kind of run into all combinations if you only are using certain abilities. Because I'll be honest, some of those abilities were much better than others. For example, I found the turret to be really useful and the fart cloud, or the healing totem when I'm playing on a higher difficulty and need to heal. But unless you're playing a level with a lot of projectile users, I never really referred to the bubble shield, for example. And some of the other abilities I never even tried because they just didn't sound appealing or interesting. Same with weapons. The axe seemed like it would be a big DPS dealer, but I found the fact that the daggers caused bleeding damage, I never switched from the daggers because the bleeding damage was so powerful in the grand scheme of things. Melee, the ranged weapons, you had a wand that did AoE damage, then caused burning. Never did I go back to the bow once I could get that wand. So I literally stuck with like my build up the whole time and never changed it. So the cards that I would get would stick to that build up because there was never any desire to switch around to anything else because nothing else was fun to play. I found my build-up that was fun to play, and there was no variety or no massive variety that made me want to switch around. So that means that the roguelike experience they were creating, trashed. Because you have no variety in anything that you do, and the combat's already simple and bland as is. There's no real advancedness in the combat. So, I just didn't really enjoy it. But that's just a personal takeaway. I just did not enjoy it. But That brings me to my last, like, my biggest hate of the game. Everything else could have been forgiven had the game given me a funny story. Something that caused me to feel like I'm watching an episode of South Park and laughing. I can hate on the graphics of this game because the game does not look like a South Park episode like the previous games. I can hate on the combat. I can hate on anything else all day. But had this game given me a funny story that would have made me laugh for the 4 or 5 hours I was playing it, then I wouldn't have cared as much about everything else. But because I felt like I was playing like a very, very light humor, generic game, I never once enjoyed my experience. Even the few moments where I was being caused to laugh, which was very rare, I never truly enjoyed the game. And that's what was so disheartening about this game, is you never really got to enjoy it like you did the other South Park games. And then you start questioning, how the fuck did this happen? How did this game drop so low when the previous 2 games were so good? Was it a rush development? Did they just not care? Did they shoot a little bit too far out of the basket to try to make something new? Hard to tell, right? But truly, 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 I just did not enjoy my experience. Is the game outright bad? No, because I have played some really bad games. If you ever went to my playlist on Xbox, you would see that I've played a Hannah Montana video game. I played a Disney Sing It video game. So I've played some absolute 1 out of 10s, 2 out of 10s. This game is nowhere near that bad. But this game is nowhere near good. So if I was to give this a number ranking, I guess I would have to give it a 5 out of 10, right in the middle, right? And a lot of people equate a 5 out of 10 to extremely bad, but this is just like bland and not enjoyable. It's not something that bad. It's not something that made me grind my teeth and break a tooth. It's not something that made me punch a wall or throw my controller. It's not that aggravatingly bad, but it's still not a good game. So if you are interested in playing this game, and believe me when I say I don't think there's anybody in this world that'll watch this that's interested in playing it, but if you're interested in playing this game, it is absolutely a game I would say wait until it's like on Game Pass, or wait until Steam puts it on sale for like less than $5 and then pick it up then. But if you're somebody who wants to buy this game now at full retail price, it is extremely, extremely recommended to pass it up. It is a hard pass recommendation for me. Do not play this game unless you're a masochist for punishment and want to bore yourself for the next 5 hours. And even with that being said, if you're willing to spend $30 for only 5 hours of boredom, I got some things to sell you. So hit me up in the DMs. With that being said, guys, that's it for my review of South Park Snow Day. Normally, I'm not that harsh or negative about games, but after playing this game, I was really, really perturbed with how disappointing it was. Because even with all the negative press, all the negative reviews, I still wanted to give it a shot, right? Once again, like I said, even when people say games are bad, I still like to give them a chance because sometimes I have a lot of fun with those. But this was not one of those games. And I hate it so much because it's one of those games that comes from a franchise I absolutely love. So you really wanted this game to be at least a semi-fun experience. But at the best, it was a mildly bad experience. So with that being said, guys, let me know down in the comment section below what you think of South Park Snow Day. Did you love it? Did you hate it? I'm pretty sure I know where most comments will go, but I would love to know if there's anybody out there that actually really enjoyed this game. But with that being said, guys, I'll catch you on the next video. Keep it awesome.